Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody. First, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement for Central Wellington. We are meeting on the lands that we've been home to Indigenous nations since time immemorial. We acknowledge we are on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, as well as the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee. With increasing encroachment by non-Indigenous settlers in the area now known as Township of Central Wellington, the Mississaugas could no longer continue their traditional lifestyle and retreated to the villages along the Grand River, eventually settling in the Grand River Valley. The Mississaugas of the First Nations uphold their treaty rights within our jurisdiction. Today, the Township of Central Wellington remains home to Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. We are grateful to have the opportunity to share and respect Mother Earth and are committed to building constructive and cooperative relationships with Indigenous nations. Okay, so we will, item number 3, addendums and corrections to the agenda. We added an addendum which was added this afternoon, and I'll just read that. It's item 3.1, temporary access agreement with the Grand River Conservation Authority for fire service training, and this will, you'll see this in item 9.8 and by the bylaw 2027. Item number 4, disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Do I see any? I would declare that I have a pecuniary interest as relates to item 6, and that we will vote on all the other items, pull that one out, and then vote, and you'll see how that'll go. But we'll deal with that when we get to that point in the meeting. Pardon me? Clarify what number that is. Oh, sorry. I thought it was 6, but maybe it is 7.
It is the Committee of the Whole report.
Committee of the Whole report. Sorry, you're right. 7.1, and it's item number 6. Correct. Thank you. Okay, approval and adoptions of the minutes for Council 30th of January 2023 minutes PDF. Council February 27th, 2023 minutes PDF. Recommendation that the minutes of the council meeting held January 30th and February 27th, 2023 be adopted and circulated. Do you have a mover for that? Councillor McDonald, do you have a seconder? Councillor Adams, all those in favor? So moved. We will move along to item number 6, presentation and announcements, and item 6.1, we have introduction of artists. Marianne Dalkowski, Grand River Ruggers, is that correct, or who do we have there?
We're actually the Riverside Ruggers.
Riverside Ruggers. I quite like that name, so, okay.
And Resa will be doing the presentation.
Well, Resa, why don't you come up and tell us about yourself? Thank you.
I haven't been here in a long time. Come and do a little brief talk about these beautiful rugs that have been here for the last month. We are a local group. It actually started in the early 70s by a group of women in town. We still have 3 that still join us every Tuesday morning at the Fergus Library. We have the beautiful community room upstairs that we get to go and rug hook in together. And it's just been an incredible thing. I'm actually a newbie. I've only been doing it for about 3 years. But these rugs are all from the different people that are within the group, and it is open to anybody to come. Originally, rug hooking was done on burlap bags, potato bags, any kind of bags that, you know, the pioneer women could find. They'd use old clothing, rip up. You've often seen those braided rugs. And what we're doing, we use this one little hook, and we use, now mostly people are using linen, which is like this, which you can draw on with a Sharpie marker, which is what I had done, and wool. And some people rug hook with yarn, and other people rug hook with fabric wool, which we call worms, and you cut it. And it's just a really wonderful, wonderful craft, and you can make any size rugs possible. So we wanted to thank you for letting us have this show here. It's in through the Arts Council, and it's been really an honor for all of us to be able to be part of the chamber. So I don't know if anybody had any questions about the...
Yes, Barb?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, Resa, how I love this. You know, we don't often get an opportunity here in our role to hear such a good news story that you're just coming in to thank us and celebrate the good work you're doing and what you're bringing to our community. So I flip that back and thank you. I
Thanks.
love that you started our night with this, and I love the work that you guys are doing, and I will personally pop by to see what's happening because it sounds great.
Yeah, come anytime. It's really great.
Amazing.
And, you know, because it's a free time at the library, we do get other people just popping in from Guelph, and, you know,
Right.
not everybody's rug hooking. Some people are coming in, they're knitting.
This is community.
It's
Thank
really
you.
social. It's very community. Yeah.
Through you, Mayor Waters. Thank you for coming. How long do we have these rugs here in Chamber to use? They're beautiful.
I'm not sure. I think only another couple of weeks.
Okay.
You'd have to ask the
Some
Arts
borrowed
Council what
time.
the plan is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, through you, Mayor. Just a quick clarification, if people are interested in joining, are they registering, are they contacting the association directly or through the library?
Just show up.
Just show up.
Yeah, because the library actually does advertise within their program notes, but we don't usually do anything on Facebook. We'll be part of the Fiber Festival in Fergus in May again, which was really great last year. People were really, really interested in that. You know, the fiber arts are just a really big thing now, so, and this is a really great one. You get to walk all over them. They're wonderful. They all go on the floor.
One more question.
Yeah.
And this would be open to all abilities, all ages. Just want to confirm.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Like-
we're there from 10 until noon or 1 o'clock. We have the space till 1 o'clock. We will show people how to rug hook. It's really easy. Like, there's no rules, and there's only one way of doing it. It's not like knitting, and if you make a mistake, you just rip it out and go again. It's really wonderful. So, yes, please come. Okay? Thanks very much.
Thanks, Resa, and again, these are beautiful pieces, and we're very proud to have them in in the hall here. Thanks again. Okay, item 6.2, I'd like to welcome Steve O'Neill, County Councillor, Ward 4. Welcome.
Oh, turn it on. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to give you a short update, and I guess we'll start with everybody's favorite topic. At the March 14th Roads Committee meeting, we had a presentation on automated speed enforcement. A number of municipalities are using this to try and change driver behavior with speeding. Waterloo and Peel Region are currently using it. There's many others as well. The cameras can only be used in community safety zones or school zones. And the county has 9 community safety zones and 9 school zones on county roads. 3 of them in Centre Wellington, in Fergus on County Road 18, Bellside East from Tower Street to McTavish, that includes J.D. Hogarth School, in Elora on Wellington Road 18, East Mill Street from Chapel to Kirtland, and that includes the Elora Public School, and in Elora, Wellington Road 7 from McNabb Street to Spears Road, basically County Road 21 to Dars Market. So those are community safety zones. Center Wellington school safety zones on county roads include J.D. Hogarth, Elora Public, and Ponsonby School. County staff is going to further investigate and bring a report with costing and other issues to the Roads Committee at a later date. Speeding on our roads does generate a large number of complaints, probably to you guys as well, but it certainly is on the county side. Residents can go to wellington.ca and use the speed concern form to alert county staff and the OPP about speeding issues on county roads. It's a fairly new portal, but it's getting a lot of use. And if it gets enough complaints, the OPP and roads take a close look at it. If the county council decides to install automated speed enforcement, local townships would be able to designate their own safety zones and participate if they wish. And the county has budgeted for speed enforcement throughout our 10-year plan. So that's all on speeding. Spring's just around the corner, and that means leaf and yard waste pickup begins next month. Pickup east of Highway 6 begins April 17th. West of Highway 6 begins the week of the 24th of April. And depending upon volumes, your material can be picked up any day of the week. And so please have it out to curbside on Monday. And a couple projects in Elora that the county is working on this year. The Elora transfer station will see some upgrades this year. A scale will be installed. There'll be some more paving and a retaining wall worked on, and the drop-off area is also being expanded. The Elora transfer station is one of our busiest spots for transfer stations by far. A roundabout is going to be worked on at County Road 7 and First Line in Elora, the Jefferson corner for reference, I guess. And that's a major project, an important and busy intersection within the county. And as this is my first time since the election, I just want to congratulate all the new councillors that got elected around the table. And take questions if anybody's got any.
Thanks. Through you, Mayor Waters. Thanks, Steve. I was just curious about the speeding, and as we've discussed the speeding issues in Bellwood, so...
Bellwood?
Bellwood,
Really?
yeah. So both County Road 19 and County Road 26 go through there, and quite a few complaints. So I'm just curious, from your perspective, what the best approach would be to get Bellwood designated as a community safety zone, or is that something the county...
To get it where?
Designated a community safety zone? Is that possible, or is that something that the county would do, or the township?
Well, so the county has set criteria for community safety zones, and it's scored on it's got a scoring system. So Bellside, running from the old high school east, scored fairly high, number of residents, number of driveways onto the county road, plus a school. It scored a wee bit lower going east of McTavish that would have went in front of the community center. So we didn't get it expanded that far. Bellwood, to get a community safety zone, we're going to have to lower the score that we would permit a community safety zone. And that's really just a function of council, though, because we did, if you weren't quite at the score, but we're within one, we did some of those as community safety zones. But without a school, and it's just the volume of people that are around it. They'll have a lot of people around them.
Councillor McDonald?
Through you, Mayor Waters. Thank you so much. That's a very thorough update. You mentioned at wellington.ca on Wellington County's website, you can click on an icon for speeding and fill out a form.
Easiest way to do it is search the speed concern form, and it will take you to that page.
Okay. We do something similar in Center Wellington, and I'm wondering if it's possible to, so it alleviates the confusion of speeding when folks are reporting it, if there is something on Center Wellington's website that will take you to it as well. I just thought I'd throw that out there for, I'm just speaking on behalf of me in Center Wellington, but I don't know what the other townships are planning, but it would just help citizens because, you know, I still get feedback that they don't understand that we're two levels of government. And so if we had on our website and it said, is this a county road or is this a Center Wellington road? And then they would click on that, it would take it to yours. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Not specifically a question, but if you, in your next conversations, maybe if you could bring that up, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Evelyn.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for your report, Councillor Neal. Councillor, I'm curious, could you give me, again, this is all new to me, can you explain why there can only be those cameras? Is that what I understood in an already designated safety zone? It would seem counterintuitive to put more help where there's already something and nothing where there's nothing.
Strictly a function of the provincial government said that's how these are going to be set up. School zone or community safety zone.
And so did I understand, to follow up through you, sir, did I understand you to say then that we can't, like the areas that I know some of my constituents, for example, have been deeply concerned about the level of speeding and the frequency of speeding, that because there's not a school in the area, we couldn't designate it as?
Is it a township road?
No, it's a township road, yeah.
That would be a function of this council to decide if they wanted to make
Oh, I
that a community
understand.
safety zone. So if the county council decides to go through with this, and because it is such a, I think it will eventually go through, it seems to take time. But at that point, the townships in Wellington County would be able to set up their own community safety zones and ask to participate.
Understood. Thanks for clarifying. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? Well, thank you, Mr. O'Neill. It was very pleasant to see you again today. So I know we'll be chatting in the next little bit. So thanks again for coming out and telling us about what's happening at the county.
Okay, thank you.
Item 6.3, Councillors' Committee updates. So opportunity to tell us what's going on. Thank you.
Well, QMS is later this week, so I only have community safety. We met last week at the OPP station in Rockwood. Some of the things that were mentioned, you know, that again, we are the largest population in Wellington County and we don't have our own community safety plan, or only our own community safety committee, I should say. Last week was Poison Prevention Week. There's an upcoming Drayton Farm Show that they're going to be participating in that represents all of us as townships. The Lions Home and Leisure Show in May, and there's going to be National Injury Prevention Day, July 5th. And we will have another meeting. Next meeting is May 17th. So I know in our strategic planning, we're going to talk about the committees and all of that stuff, but just for council's information, it was mentioned to me again, that we should possibly have a committee, and we'll look at that, but that's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Yes, Councillor Wilton.
Thank you. I have two. So the first one is for the hospital board, which I'm speaking on behalf of Councillors Jefferson and Adams as well. They didn't approve my notes, so we'll see if they want to add anything. So as members of the Groves Hospital Board, we're part of the Wellington Healthcare Alliance, and that is currently undergoing a strategic planning process. So we've been participating in strategic planning meetings with that Healthcare Alliance, which has been really interesting. They are doing it internally, so a little different process than we're following, but had two brainstorming sessions around that, which has been good. And that will continue, and that, of course, covers North Wellington Healthcare as well, so it's a collaborative effort with all of the people involved there. The other important news for Center Wellington is that the Groves Hospital Legacy site is slated for demolition. There are lots of rationale and reasons for that, which the hospital has in a frequently asked questions document available to the public as needed. And then once that is goes through the demolition process, that land will go up for sale and follow the appropriate planning process at that time. And I do believe there's still some level of provincial approval on that demolition process, so it's not all completely done yet, but that is the plan at the moment. So that's been interesting. And the second one is for the Fergus BIA, and the big important news there is that the Tartan Day is this Sunday, April 2nd, so go have fun in downtown Fergus. Lots of things for everyone, and kids too. Another important thing is Fergus was featured recently in a blog TO article with quite nice shout outs and little bits about some of the businesses, including lots of the restaurants and things like that, and some beautiful pictures, so that was a nice thing to see for Fergus. And then with the Fergus BIA, they have a lot planned for this summer and the fall, so it should be pretty exciting. You can Google Fergus BIA or downtownfergus.com and you get a whole list of their events. So the Fiber Festival, which we just heard about, there's going to be a steampunk festival this fall, which sounds pretty cool. The Scottish Festival, of course. And just having been kind of a new person going to the BIA meetings, just like big shout out to all the volunteers and business owners that put so much effort into it, because they really put a lot of their own time into making all these cool things happen downtown Fergus. So that's my update for that one.
Thank you, Councillor Wilton. Yes, Councillor Evoy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will update on doctor recruitment. I think the people that are involved sitting at the table right now, the team that makes up doctor recruitment is working very hard on finding the most effective ways to both recruit and maintain. And of course, that often finds its way to our table here at Council to make sure that we are working alongside them to make that happen. So I will come back again, but to Councillor Wilton's point, thank you to all the volunteers that step up for all of these committees and help us to get things done as a community.
Thank you, Councillor Evoy. Any other comments? Oh, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. With the Elora BIA for an update, they're currently working on a marketing plan for 2023. They're getting ready for the Mill Street East closure. That's coming up this coming April. And then Elora Licious kicked off March 24th to April 2nd, and that includes 13 restaurants in the downtown core. And we have a garbage committee meeting next week, so that'll be exciting. So great, thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak to anything? I will, on the GRCA front, it's been, we've had a lot of action early in the session, but last week's meeting was more technical stuff within the GRCA. I've asked staff to start forwarding those minutes around, so you'll see those on a regular basis, and that'll provide an opportunity if there's any questions that come out, and we can either do it through council, or if you see me and you have a question, but we'll start to do that as well. So I think that's, again, thank you very much, council, for those comments, and we'll leave this part of the meeting, and now we'll move to item 7. Item 7, a report from Committee of the Whole, March 13th, 2023. And bear with me, I have a recommendation. So I'm just going to read through this.
Now, you don't have to read all.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, there you go. Well, here's the highlighted one here. So, okay, that item 1 through 5 and 7 from the report of the Committee of the Whole dated March 13th, 2023 be approved as circulated. Do you have a mover for that? Councillor Evoy. Seconder, Councillor Wilton. Okay, all those in favor? So moved. So item 6, which I couldn't vote on, I'm going to step aside, and if you'd like to come forward, Councillor Jefferson.
Well, I think it's just important because it's been separated out.
So you want me to read all of that?
I think so.
Okay then. Do I have to do any of that?
No.
Just read this.
Yes.
Okay, here we go, story time. Alrighty. So we have item 6 from the Committee of the Whole report is that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington received for information an update on the new Township Operations Centre project as outlined in report number IS 2023-05. and that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington endorses conceptual design option 2 to add the Planning and Development Department to the new Township Operations Center, and that staff report back on options and alternatives discussed at the Committee of the Whole meeting held March 13th, 2023, prior to detailed design, including future use of the house. Can I have somebody to move that? I have Councillor Wilton and a seconder, Councillor Craddock, and vote? Or any? All those in favor? Okay. And that's everybody? So that's carried. That's good?
Yep.
Thank you for doing that. Okay, we're on to, hold on, item number 8, delegations. Item 8.1, and Caroline Baker. Welcome, Caroline.
Good evening, Mayor Waters, members of council. My name is Caroline Baker. I'm a registered professional planner with Baker Planning Group. I'm here this evening on behalf of the Groves Hospital Volunteer Association and Reed's Heritage Homes. Just so you're aware, there's a number of members from both organizations in the audience, should there be any further detailed questions that they may be able to assist with. So I'm just going to get used to your remote for a minute. I'm assuming it's just the forward button. Perfect. So this may seem familiar to some. We were before council end of August last year with the statutory public meeting for the proposed zone change application. I did want to just spend a few minutes sort of giving a little bit more of the overview of the project and its location, and then some follow-up from what we heard at the public meeting from members of council as well as the residents that were in attendance. So the site is located at 950 to 960 St. David Street North in Fergus. It is about 2 hectares in size. As you'll note in the staff report, it is currently 2 separate legal properties. The first property has the entire frontage on St. David, and the second property is located to the rear. There is the existing new-to-use store that fronts onto the highway, and a vacant portion to the rear. The photo on the right just demonstrates the overall site location and context on the northeast outermost boundary of the settlement area for Fergus. The application before you is intended to facilitate the redevelopment of the site to be a mixed-use development comprising commercial and residential uses. The overall intent is to implement the existing official plan designation, being highway commercial, and the existing zoning, which is a C2 highway commercial, which similarly permits mixed-use development. So both the official plan and the zoning bylaw, subject to recent housekeeping, we understand late last year, does allow for commercial uses that are oriented to the road with residential uses in behind. And the application as presented this evening is to deal with some minor modifications to the provisions to facilitate this specific concept that you do see. I would note, however, as you can see in the site plan drawing with the color scheme, that the intent of both organizations and to ensure that this is an integrated, comprehensive design that considers matters such as centralized access, vehicular movement, pedestrian, as well as, of course, benefiting from the site's visibility for the commercial use. Just to focus on the commercial component, so certainly the association's intent is to rebuild the new-to-use store. They've certainly outgrown the current building on the site, looking for improved storage, improved client access, as well as loading, so for shipping and receiving for the materials they not only receive, but then also have to ship out. With the project architect, they've designed conceptual building elevations and layout. You'll see it's an L-shaped building. It's approximately 14,000 square feet. You'll see loading is to the rear. as well as 53 off-street parking and spaces, which will of course include accessible parking spaces. You will see a larger setback from St. David Street North. That is a requirement of the Ministry of Transportation. They have a minimum 14-meter setback where they have controlled roads. So that's why you'll see the larger green space to the front. The rear portion, known as the residential component, is proposed to be developed by Reed's Heritage Homes. They are looking to construct 112 stacked townhouse dwelling units. Each would include 2 bedrooms. There's a series of buildings. Each building would be 3.5 stories in height, and they would also include a number of amenity areas. So there's a centralized amenity area you'll see in the center of the parking. There are rear yard amenity areas, and there are balconies as well, which would be, of course, private. In terms of parking, the proposal is for 1.2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. This is a schematic of the proposed architectural design of the buildings and the residential component. We have just add some, I guess call them horizontal and vertical lines to explain how the stacked townhouse will function. So they're stacked 4 on top of each other, and then depending on the block, typically there's 6 across, which gives you 24 units per building. With respect to the zoning bylaw amendment application, as noted, the form of development proposed in the concept is permitted in the existing zoning. The site-specific provisions that are being requested include a specific definition for stacked townhouse. The current zoning bylaw does permit stacked towns, but only 2 on top of each other. So the request for the amendment is to allow for 4 to be stacked when 2 are currently permitted. The second is to provide site-specific parking rates. There's 2 site-specific parking rates. For the commercial, the request is 1 space per 30 square meters. And the intent is that the new-to-use store has a warehousing component, it has storage component, and it has retail. So we're proposing a blended rate that marries what warehousing would require and what retail would require to ensure there's appropriate number for the use that they are looking at. When we move into the residential component, as noted, it's 1.2 spaces per unit. That would be over and above the new parking rate in the C2 zone, which is 1 parking space per unit. The additional 0.2 is to ensure that there is also visitor parking. So it allows 1 per unit, as well as the 0.2 for additional visitor parking. One of the benefits, certainly, of mixed-use sites is that there is additional parking, but in this case, with the Volunteer Association having the new-to-use store and Reed's developing the residential component, they wanted to ensure there was sufficient visitor parking for those residents. Following up from the public meeting in August, we received comments largely related to traffic, comments on parking, site circulation and access, as well as accessible units. So I just want to take a few minutes and give a bit of an update from where we've been since August. The first would be the traffic impact study. This was submitted as part of the application. The public meeting was held. We did receive not only comments from residents, but comments from the Ministry of Transportation. Paradigm Transportation Solutions, the transportation engineers, prepared an addendum update that was resubmitted to the Ministry of Transportation for review. They have reviewed that and accepted the conclusions in terms of transportation impact and required roadway improvements. And that is a 15-meter southbound, so coming into town, left turn lane from St. David into the site. The project engineers have confirmed there is sufficient width on St. David Street North to accommodate that left turn lane. That will be a responsibility of the developer to ensure that that left turn is constructed. And this addressed MTO comments, and they agreed in terms of conclusion and impacts that the development and its associated traffic could be handled within the existing road network. Certainly, the team will continue to work with MTO should the zone change be approved through the site plan process. There's a number of MTO permits that are required, entrance permits, grading permits, so those will all be undertaken with MTO. Off-street parking, I did touch on this a moment earlier, speaking to the commercial parking rate and the residential. Just a note in speaking with Paradigm Transportation Solutions that the 1.2 parking space per dwelling unit, not only would it exceed in the C2 zone, but does also exceed the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Manual for the proposed form of residential use and the demand analysis of how many parking spaces are typically used for this form of development. Pedestrian circulation and access. There was questions at the public meeting about how residents or potential customers for the store might be able to walk to the site. We did have the opportunity to work with your staff further through the fall on this matter. It's our understanding that the intent is to extend a sidewalk along the east side of Gordon Street, the township extending from Gordon Street to the start of this site. And then the owners of this site would be required to extend the sidewalk across their frontage. My understanding is that would be a concrete sidewalk, but I do see Mr. Baker here as well. And certainly those details will be worked through as part of the site plan application. Within the development, the proposal is a 1.8 meter sidewalk or walkway that would be, of course, designed to accessible standards and connect through all components of the development. That ties into the next piece. There was a question at the public meeting about accessible units. Based on that feedback, Reeds did go back and review the design with their engineers and grading and have been able to add accessible units adjacent to the accessible parking spaces. And that has been included on the revised design as submitted to staff. So that certainly concludes my presentation. I would note that we have reviewed the staff report and are in agreement with their conclusions with respect to conformity and consistency with planning policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. We'll open up for some questions. Councillor Evelyn.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Very excited, of course, to see growth. I have a couple of questions as this is close to home. First of all, the traffic issue, obviously, that came up first is, that you shared first, has been one of the number one comments in that area, number one concerns. So I hear you taking care of everything on the one side of the road, and I just want to make sure that this increased traffic isn't going to spill over to the other side. People tend to rush, find other ways to get to where they need to. So as long as traffic is properly calmed and directed and routed in the first place, I don't anticipate that being a problem. So I'm glad to see you guys did the extra work on that. Around active transportation, I'm hoping very seriously that you make sure that that happens. Of course, we'll help in any way from whatever we can do, but I'm glad to see that they are on board with looking at active transportation that doesn't end halfway before they get there, which we tend to see a lot. And I also want to talk about what kind of housing this is cost-wise. What are we looking at? Is this accessible to all kinds of people in our community as per our overarching goal?
Through the mayor, in terms of the units themselves, so as noted, they're 2-bedroom units in stacked townhouse format. In speaking with Reeds, I mean, certainly I would always caveat any price point with interest rates, material cost, changes in the market. I think they're hoping that they'll start around $650,000 for the units that are about 900 plus square feet.
So there's no, sorry through you, Mr. Mayor, so there's no discussion about making some of them a little bit more affordable or accessible in that respect?
Through the mayor, very interesting question about affordable and attainable. I'm sure you're all very well versed in the changes from Bill 23 and certainly the housing challenges we're facing across Ontario. The way Bill 23 is looking at attainable and affordable, as I'm sure you're familiar, is modified definition between affordable being 80% of market value. We're not quite sure on attainable yet. I wish we had a quantitative way to assess it. Yeah. But certainly, I'm not a real estate expert, but looking in the surrounding community and the range of housing that's available, predominantly street townhouses, single-family townhouses, while I wouldn't put this necessarily in the category of affordable, that would be a lower price point. Depending when we look at the regional market area and how Bill 23 evolves, these may be considered attainable housing units, but I wouldn't want to suggest that they were affordable to you.
Just the final word through you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to think that there might be some consideration, because that is our overarching goal, is to make sure that we have not just housing available, but housing that more people can access. So affordable and attainable housing is a discussion that I would hope that all builders consider, having at least some units so that we can help fulfill our goal of meeting the needs of all of our people. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Adams.
Through you, Mayor. First, I just wanted to actually start with a shout out to the Groves Hospital Association. I think this is a great community project. They could have just went and renovated their store. They, I know just with them reaching out, they've been an association that have been in existence for over 90 years and have fundraised over $2 million to the community to support hospitals, our hospital. And it's largely generated that revenue through the store. So first, I just kind of want to highlight that. And again, it's really a great example of an association doing more. And I was present at the public meeting in the summer and heard about the traffic concerns, the sidewalk concerns, and about the lack of accessible dwelling units. So I'm really happy to see that that was included. It was something that didn't have to be done. So I think that's really great to see, and as well as like the sidewalk. And I like to see the, I know there might be some other comments around the sidewalk and maybe how we can make that better. So again, just wanted to say great job on all of that. I did have a question going back to the public meeting. There was talk about trying to, well, two questions. I thought initially there was like a little bit, like I'm assuming children and families are gonna be living in these units, and I'm not sure if there's any, like we see green, but is there like play space for young children being planned here? And then at the public meeting, there was talk about trying to potentially attach to the trails nearby and to the parks nearby. I'm just kind of curious if you could speak to any of that.
Certainly through the mayor, and I don't know if it's possible to get the site plan back up, if that might help just orient. I'm happy to speak to it, but if that certainly helps. So on the left-hand side, so you'll certainly see towards the top of the page, yes, a connection to the east continues to be proposed, and discussions, that's county-owned land, working with them in terms of getting that connection, and that is being maintained. So there's connections throughout the site and then onward to the trail to the east. With respect to the playground, there are two centralized amenity areas proposed within the residential component. So the first is what I'll call the green or landscaped island that you see with trees, looking along there for some benches, trees, a meandering walkway. There's another green or common amenity area on the mid-northern portion. I know it's a bit challenging because this concept is oriented east-west, not north-south, but essentially the boundary between the commercial and the residential, the blue and the pink. There's another amenity there, and that's certainly an option to take back to Reeds to consider through site plan whether there could be some sort of play structure in that location.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilton.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Waters, thank you for the presentation. I have a question mainly about bicycle parking and bicycle storage. So unless I'm reading the drawings incorrectly, I don't see any secure ground level bicycle lockers or anything like that. So I only see a mention of 8 bicycle parking spots, but I assume that's just a rack. So I'm curious about if you could speak to where people would put their things, for one thing. So that'd be my first question. And I'll just wrap the second one because it's somewhat related in terms of storage and that. Well, maybe I'll let you answer the bicycle one first. That'd be more clear.
Not a problem. Certainly through the mayor, you are correct. On the site plan drawing, there are 8 bicycle parking spaces. They are secure in that they can be locked, but they're not bicycle storage rooms that you might see, let's say, in a condo building in the basement. Certainly in speaking with Reeds, they would be open to adding more bicycle parking on the site through the site plan process, so that more could have an ability to lock their bike. And maybe I'll let you have the second part of the question on storage, and then I can speak a little bit further to that, if that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Just wondering with the waste disposal on site, I see it on the drawing there more on the new to use side of things. So I'm just curious where residents would actually take their blue boxes and green bins and how they'd actually manage that on site? Because I think these types of housing are great, and we want to see more of these in the communities, but if they don't function the way humans function on a day-to-day basis, I'm worried it'll just get really challenging for people, and they'll be, where would the garbage actually get stored and maintained and picked up and everything for the residential part?
So certainly through the mayor, garbage storage and collection will be addressed through the site plan application with staff. Typically for this form of development, being stacked townhouses, there are two options that can be considered, and certainly open to discussing with staff in terms of preferred approach. So the first option in certain municipalities, they actually will provide garbage collection like they would in a normal development, where you can put your garbage out and it'd be picked up. In other municipalities, and certainly there's plenty of room on the site, the other option is to have a centralized garbage location, to have something like a Moloch. I'm sure you've seen them in municipal parks. That's the other option. And then there is a coordinated pickup where the garbage truck essentially would come and remove it from the Moloch. So certainly in speaking with the design team, there is options and room for both, and we'll certainly work with staff through site plan. Thank you.
Just one more question, going back to the active transportation. As you probably know, this highway, well, St. David Street North, but it is Highway 6 as well, so it's quite busy. So I'm just thinking with the sidewalk for both the township staff and for the developer, if that could be looked at as more as a multi-purpose trail, so there'd be room for people biking, if they want to bike down to the Freshco and get their groceries, they could do that quite easily. It's not very far, but it would actually be quite dangerous if it had off-road kind of option, especially if you want to bike down with your children, for example. So I was just thinking if we have this opportunity, we can make it a multi-purpose pathway that has room for the mobile scooters and e-bikes and bicycles and kids scootering too, and everybody can share that space and be off the highway. So I'm just curious if that would be an option that you could look into as you're going through the site plan.
Through the mayor, I believe, yes, those discussions would occur with staff through site plan in terms of the design and grading along St. David Street North. So thank you.
Councillor McDonald?
Through you, Mayor Waters. So my understanding is they're not condos, correct?
Through the mayor, they would be condos.
They're
yes.
condos, so
Correct.
you will have a you will have a property manager?
Typically,
Eventually.
when they become condos, there is a condo board that is established with a number of rights and responsibilities. And typically, condos, yes, will retain a number of expertise, including property management.
Okay, that's excellent. So you'll have someone overseeing the property, and, you know, that would be a go-between, I guess, between county on things and Center Wellington on things if any issues arose after it was built.
Certainly,
Usually
yes.
that's how it works, yeah.
Through the mayor, there's a number of companies that actually specialize in property management that work with condos and assist with all their reporting and financial, along with property standards and maintenance.
Okay, and so my understanding is in order for New to You to do this building, this is a collaborative situation between Reed Homes and New to You, and I'm very aware of how much New to You raises every day. It's approximately $2,000 plus every day for the hospital, and they need a nice place to do their volunteering because it is a huge volunteer base. So I'm thrilled to see this, and I actually thank Councillor Wilton for some key things with biking, and if you need an example what they did around the hospital as multi-use, that's been pretty effective as a biker. But thank you so much for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Any other comments, question? Yes, Councillor Boy.
Sorry, just to amend through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry. I would also like to add, believe it or not, we didn't mention green bins, and I noticed that green bins always get left. We don't add them as we should be adding them everywhere. And I actually don't know what a mollusk is, so can you just expand with how you pronounce it?
Of course, yes, through a Moloch. So it's M-O-L-O-C-K. They became quite popular a number of years ago, but essentially what they do is a deep well, so they're able to dig quite far. Again, I'm not an engineer, so don't mind my layman's explanation, but they certainly dig very far into the ground, and so they can store quite a bit of garbage without it having to be seen above grade or visible. And what you end up seeing is I think it looks like brown faux wood sort of siding around the outside, and you can put the garbage in, and it's similar to a regular size, maybe slightly larger garbage bin, but it can hold significantly more volume. So it assists with the visual impact of sort of centralized garbage areas and allows for easy pickup by garbage truck.
May I ask a question actually at this time, Mr. Mayor? So do we have other places here that have this many units in one space right now? To our planners, I apologize for not knowing. Yes?
Yes.
I'm only asking because we have a garbage collection pickup problem already, and I want to make sure that this is actually well addressed and that it's well thought out ahead of time. So we don't have a space where we're inviting rodents and everything else. So just a really big point that I'm glad we brought up. Thank you. And thank you for doing this. I'm very excited to see it come to fruition.
Thank you.
And yes, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Just as you're going through site plan, I'm just curious, with the 2-bedroom units, I notice all of them are going to be 2-bedroom, and I know that's probably fairly typical of this type of housing, but I was just curious with like family with even 2 kids, or if somebody needed a home office, which is now very normal to have to be able to work from home. Is there any opportunity to look at mixing it up a bit, like some 1-bedroom, some 2, and some 3 to accommodate that? So you don't have to answer it today, but I'm just curious if you could take that back and give that some thought.
Yes, thank you.
That's a necessary type of housing, so thanks.
Any other comments or questions? I have a question, if that's okay.
Of course.
A really nice site plan. I think it'll fit well into the community. Was there, and being sort of new to this process, there's obviously a new council, and you had started off with a previous council. Curious to, when you were looking at that, the new to you building, did you look at it as any time as a multi-structure in terms of it being a single? I know there's obviously the way things have happened now is that we can go higher and we can have residential, but had you looked at residential at all on that single-story structure?
Yes, actually, the Volunteer Association, through their architects, have looked at potential options to put residential above, what that would look like from a design perspective, what the cost implications would be, and then associated supporting functions. I think that's still certainly an option that they can consider with the zoning that's before you this evening.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. That was a great point, Mr. Mayor, and through you, given that I'm very well aware of the good work that this group does, and they are well aware of our need for doctor space. Might be a natural marriage to consider moving forward to create some spaces above there. Just saying.
I think we're done, and I think we'll give you a break now.
That's great.
Anyways, I appreciate your presentation. It was very informative, and we're looking forward to seeing this move along. So
Thank you.
Okay, we go to item 9.1, decision report, RZ 11-22, 950 and 960 St. David Street North, Fergus. We have a report from our planner, Brett Salmon. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Well, I'm glad you were able to have a presentation since you weren't the council that heard the public meeting. So, and thank Carolyn for doing such a thorough job. Made my job a little bit easier. So this is the report that is recommending approval of this application. And I just want to walk you through my report quickly. I think, as I said, Carolyn's done a very good job of presenting the application. So I just want to point out their application came in last June. As she noted, we held the public meeting in August. In addition to their planning application, which included the planning justification report, which I've appended here for you to read, they did a transportation impact study that's been peer-reviewed. They've done a functional servicing report, which has been peer-reviewed as well. In terms of the public comments, Caroline did a very good job of addressing the public comments that were received in writing and at the public meeting, really related to traffic. And the MTO approval, I think, addresses that issue as best as can be done. In terms of the agency comments, we've received comments from County Planning Department, they have no objection. GRCA had no objection, and the Upper Grand District School Board had no objection. I did include in my report, for your benefit, quite a bit of kind of background about the policy context and how the latest versions of the provincial growth plan and places to grow and the provincial policy statement were updated after the province introduced its housing supply action plan. So a lot of the policy changes that were made were intended to encourage more housing, and I want to say it's very important to note that the provincial approach in the policy is very much a market-driven approach, that we need more housing of all types and all prices, and so they're not asking for municipalities to ask for every development to include affordable housing. We need more housing, period. I do agree with Caroline's statement that we're waiting for the province to say what attainable means. And there's a chance that this development will meet it, but we don't know that. And so there's no guarantees. But again, my report's on the basis that the provincial policy is a market-driven approach, and we need all types of housing because there's a shortage, not just of affordable housing, there's a shortage of all types. And when there's a shortage of, I guess, higher end housing, it means that people that would buy that higher end housing are maybe buying something less expensive than they really want, which actually makes it harder for other people to afford that housing. So that's why the objective is to increase the supply in general. But other than that, Caroline's report and my report conclude the same thing, that this application conforms to the growth plan, it's consistent with the PPS, and it conforms to the county OP and the township OP. I did want to highlight a couple of things on the site plan. If you noticed, Caroline was incorrect. She mentioned the county owns the land, but it's actually township land immediately to the east. We do have a park over there. There's a bit of a wetland in between, but they have provided within the development a connection so that in the event that we're able to create a multi-use path to get from one side of that park over to this development, then the connection will be there. There actually is, I don't know if you noticed on the air photo, there already is a connection to the county housing facility. So that connection was already made and it continues on the site plan. And I do want to make note that we have not received a site plan application, or we've not reviewed a site plan application. So what you've seen in front of you is a kind of conceptual site plan, and all the details of the things that council asked questions about, the garbage storage and those sorts of things are the kind of things that we review, and we have standards in our site plan guidelines for those things that we make sure. The county, if there's to be a future condominium application, one of the conditions that the county would typically impose is how are you going to deal with waste? And if there is the prospect of coming to an agreement that would see the county enter onto the site to pick up garbage. But on this kind of development, that's not typical. With a multi-res, we would normally see private garbage pickup. And the Moloch garbage units that came up in Caroline's presentation, we do have a number of those in the township already. Some of the apartment buildings that Keating has built use the Moloch for garbage. I think the McDonald's in Fergus uses the Moloch because they do store the garbage below grade, and there's a little bit, it's less messy. But if they don't choose to go with that method, then we do have design guidelines around screening the garbage and that sort of thing. And incumbent in any site plan agreement is that there's a commitment to maintain the facilities that are built. So those things are pretty routine. So we're recommending that council approve the zoning amendment. We agree with the comments from the applicant that even though they've asked for a bit of reduction of parking, that the parking is adequate. The retail standard that, might apply to a grocery store, it really doesn't fit the kind of operation that you need to use. So we think it's reasonable. And I would say overall in North America, there's a trend towards reducing the amount of parking that your zoning bylaw requires, because I think if everybody looks around, there's a lot of empty parking spaces at our commercial developments in particular. So they tend to require too much parking. And so there is a trend towards using a firm like Paradigm to do a traffic generation and coming up with what is the right amount of parking for this project. And some municipalities are even eliminating their minimum parking requirements altogether and saying, well, it's up to the builder to determine how much parking they need. We're not there yet. We're in a place with no transit, but there's a lot of other municipalities that are going through that exercise. I do want to comment a little bit on infrastructure. They've done sufficient reports that our engineers at Triton have reviewed. The infrastructure requirements for this development can be met. And again, they've initiated the conversation with infrastructure about extending the sanitary sewer and connections, and all those conversations have begun and are well underway. So again, my conclusion is it's consistent with the PPS and the growth plan, conforms to the county and the township OP. So my recommendation is that council give 3 readings to the zoning amendment.
Thank you, Brett. Comments, questions? Jennifer?
Through you, Mayor. Just a question actually about the school. I'm just curious if we know at this time whether the options would be whether if there was children located in these homes, if it would be a bus or like walk to school. I'm just kind of trying to think of whether we would see children at the front of Highway 6 there in the mornings, or if they're trying to walk down, I can't remember the street behind there, but if they're headed towards Victoria Terrace, I know
that's a good question. Usually in the planning comments, they don't say what school the kids will be directed to at this point. So that's a tough one, but they do specifically ask for conditions related to the provision of a sidewalk and a safe place to pick up kids. There's lots of room on the site, I think, if that were to be the case.
Councillor Evoy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of points. Thank you, Mr. Salmon, for reminding us that there is no obligation from our builder's perspective to add affordable and attainable housing. That's not to say I'm not going to try and disrupt what was normal anyway and look for some positive change moving forward. Also, I'm curious about the parking issue. You talk about how much there is or isn't, or how much there's going to be. If that spills over onto the streets, does that become a problem? I have a really bad I have an inability to imagine what's there right beside it. But will spillover create a problem for our residents that are nearby?
Well, I think in this case, parking on the road, since it's Highway 6, is sort of not going to happen.
So they'd have to go elsewhere.
But I think the benefit to this site is there's adequate parking for the residential development, there's adequate parking for the commercial development, and we envisioned this and looked at the parking holistically as what's the total amount of parking on the whole site. Because if there's, new to use operating hours, probably stop at 6 o'clock or whatever, and so if people have visitors in the evening, there's going to be a whole bunch of parking spaces that are there that are not being used. So our opinion is that in this case, there shouldn't be a concern about kind of overflow parking.
Okay, my final question through you, Mr. Mayor, is around safety, again, referring to the active transportation. Does that mean, and I don't know, so I'm genuinely asking, who would be responsible for the inclusion or creation of a crosswalk or something to help make sure that those students are safe if having to walk anywhere, not just to school? Where do we get a crosswalk in there, or is there guidelines around when you get to put one in, or?
Well, I'll maybe defer to Colin to help answer that
And who
one.
does that,
But we're
Mr.
at a
Baker?
signalized
Us or
intersection,
them?
right? So,
Yeah, thanks for the question and through Mayor Waters. So yeah, crosswalks are the responsibility of the township in this case. Typically, since we have the signalized intersections nearby, you know, they're push button kind of self-directed by the pedestrians there, but as we get closer to the schools, I think the closest like crossing guard even would be down at St. Joe's Catholic School, so we have one there on St. David Street. But yeah, in this case, yeah, I don't see a need right now for anything additional in terms of crossings. I think there's the between the signalized intersections and current crossing guards. I think we're covered sufficiently. If something comes up in the future, you know, definitely we could take a look at it. There's a set of criteria through the Ontario traffic manuals that we could evaluate a potential crossing location to see if it's warranted. Yeah, no problem.
Any other comments or questions from council? Seeing none, thank you, Brett. We have a recommendation that the Council Township of Centre Wellington approves application RZ 1122 and gives 3 readings to the necessary zoning bylaw amendment. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor McDonald. How do I have a seconder? Councillor Adams. All those in favor? Oh, sorry.
Point of order. It's supposed to be discussion after.
Well, I think, okay, fine. We did cover a lot, but anyways, okay.
No, I would like to propose an amendment to the recommendation.
Okay.
That the developer incorporate ground level indoor secure bicycle storage within the final site plan design. And they could choose the rate, but probably something between 15% to 25% of what the total parking requirement is currently set at. I would look to Brett Salmon for any additional details on the appropriate rate, but I believe that's in par with neighboring municipalities.
Would you like to comment on that, Brett?
right now, we have development guidelines that speak to bicycle storage facilities being encouraged but not required. And I'm not sure what specific legal authority we have. Our bylaw doesn't require, our zoning bylaw doesn't require parking for bicycles, so it's more voluntary. So I think we can encourage them to provide it, but I don't think we're at the point where we can legally require them to provide it, would be my answer.
This is more of a question, and maybe some other folks along with Brett. This is something have a discussion at site plan in terms of sort of those types of level of detail. So I'm not sure whether we can put that as a as an addendum. Can we, or is that?
She has moved an amendment. You have to deal with the amendment. If you can get a seconder for that amendment, then you would deal with the amendment prior to the main motion. If you do not get a seconder, then it dies. But she has in fact moved an amendment.
Okay. Okay, we have that on the floor. So do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Evely, all those in favor? Sorry, put your hands up, please. Those against? Okay.
It's carried.
Okay, carried. Okay. Thank you, Brett. Sorry.
That's the amendment. Now you have to go back to the main motion.
Okay. Yes, recommendation that council, I'll just read it again, that Council Township of Centre Wellington approves application RZ 1122. It gives 3 readings to the necessary zoning bylaw amendment, and
If you would mind reading it again and perhaps sending it to us.
That the developer incorporate ground level indoor secure bicycle storage within the final site plan design at a rate of approximately 15% to 25% of the total parking requirement.
and I'll just say as noted. Okay, so so we had a first and a second. All those in favor? Okay, so moved. And then there was 2 against, and the rest was 4. So.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for getting me through that. Okay, Item 9.2, part law control exemption bylaw, semi-detached dwellings, Plan 61M -245. Brett, you're still here.
I am. Thank you, Mayor Waters. Now that you're all experts in part law control exemption bylaws, here's another one. This again is in Storybrooke. Last month we did a bunch of townhouses, and this time we're dealing with a number of semi-detached dwellings. So we have part law control exemption bylaw to provide for a total of 82 semi-detached dwellings. They all have lot grading approval, and they either are or soon will be under construction. They all comply with zoning, and we would submit the bylaw to the county for approval if council passes it.
Thanks, Brett. Comments, questions? Okay, this looks pretty straightforward. Recommendation that part law control exemption, application, EX0323 be approved and bylaw to exempt certain lots within Plan 61M -245 be given 3 readings and submitted to the County of Wellington for approval. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, a seconder. Councillor McDonald, all those in favor? So moved. Item 9.3, drinking water quality management system overview, and we have Dino. Hello, welcome, Dino.
Thank you, Colin. Good evening, everyone. Today we have a report in front of Council that provides further information on the DWQMS. Through this report, it is requested that Council provide endorsement of the Township Quality Management System Operational Plan. Prior to the report, however, we have put together a quick PowerPoint presentation to provide a little bit of baseline information on the quality management system. Understand that through the Walkerton Clean Water Center training, the standard of care training went very well, and there was some questions on QMS. So yes, this was put together by Dino and Karen. Karen's not here today. However, we'll see her at our management review meeting. Do I use this guy? All right. So through the Safe Drinking Water Act and related regulations, Ontario has created a strong framework for all drinking water systems in the province. The DWQMS, also known as the Drinking Water Quality Management System, supplements this framework by endorsing a proactive and preventative approach to assuring drinking water quality. This is the direct quote from the Walkerton inquiry that initiated the development of DWQMS. The province developed a standard for all municipal drinking water systems in Ontario in 2007. It was implemented in 2009 through most drinking water systems. The standard was created to complement the drinking water safety net and provides for a consistent and standard development and application for quality management systems. The DWQMS is based on ISO 9000, which is the standard for management of systems, and the HACCP, which is the Hazardous Analysis and Critical Control Points program, which is a recognized standard for product quality control, essentially. The Municipal Drinking Water License Program is the ministry approvals framework for drinking water systems and requires that the township maintain and the owner actually maintain a number of items, which includes a drinking water works permit. Our most recent permit was issued in June 2021. Permit to take water, which is due to expire in 2024. Work related to the renewal application is ongoing. An accepted operational plan, which we're here to have endorsement of today. The accreditation of an operating authority, which is based on a third-party audit QMS. So we are your operating authority, and we undergo internal and external audits every year, a more detailed one every 3 years, to provide accreditation tests so that we are able to continue to operate your system. Financial plan, lastly, not least, a financial plan. which must be approved by council prior to submission to the province. The renewal period provides for a 5-year forecast and must include details of the proposed or projected financial position of the drinking water system. Oop. Can I go back? There we go. So the DWQMS has 21 elements. I'm going to run through them kind of quickly here. There's more detail in the report if you want to learn anything further about it. However, feel free to call me or email me at any time if you have questions or concerns on any of the specific ones. So an accepted operational plan is based on satisfying the DWQMS introduced by Justice O'Connor. The accreditation of the operating authority is based on a third-party audit of the QMS, and our operational plan is based on the 21 elements in front of you. The QMS follows the process. You've seen this one probably every meeting so far. The QMS process follows the QMS, I should say, follows the process of plan, do, check, and improve. You'll see this as a running theme throughout. This is how we operate. The operational plan sets out the processes and procedures, which is the plan. Staff must then follow the processes and procedures, which is the do. The internal audit is the systematic and documented verification that includes record review, interviewing staff, and comparing with requirements set out in the operational plan, which is the check. Okay, so the 21 elements. I won't go through them much in detail. Element 1 is the QMS and operational plan. It basically says we have to have one. Element 2 is the QMS policy, which is signed by the CAO, the mayor, and the Managing Director of Infrastructure Services. The policy appears on the Township website and is there to communicate Council's commitment to the provision of safe drinking water. Element 3 is the endorsement. Again, we're here to get Council's endorsement of our operational plan. Element 4, the QMS representatives that have responsibility and authority. So these are our QMS reps, which include myself, our ORO, who is the Supervisor of Water Services, Rick Chilton, and our Supervisor of Special Projects Customer Service is Mike Mullen. He takes care of commissioning new water mains and water-related capital projects to some degree. So these 3 people, myself included, have the responsibility to ensure that the processes and procedures are established, implemented, and maintained, ensure that they're followed, ensure that personnel are aware of them, and ensure the promotion of the QMS throughout the operating authority. And of course, to report to top management during management review. Element 5 is records, kind of describes how maintained and controlled, what our record retention times are, how they must be kept current. It details how they're stored, protected from damage because they're on site, and if we have a leaking water system, pipe, something bursts, we got to make sure that they are available for inspection. And that to the detail again of what they are to include, and they are to remain legible and readily identifiable. Element number 6, system description, which includes the name of the owner, operating authority, and has a detailed description of the raw water supply, including source water protection areas, and process diagrams, detailed process diagrams for all the well sites. Element 7 is risk assessment. So through this process, it occurs every 36 months. We sit down as a group for several hours and undergo a detailed assessment of all risks to our system. So during the 36 months, through we have monthly leadership meetings, we start documenting risks that come up. And you know, we take all of them as a risk and we eliminate the ones that are not a risk. However, through the risk assessment, we consider them all and identify mitigation measures, essentially, put them in practice. Or if it requires repairs, it goes to infrastructure review. Risk assessment outcomes completed and accomplished through infrastructure review was element 8. Element 9 is the organizational structure. One of the attachments to the report is the organizational structure. We couldn't figure out how to get it into Compass, to be a part of the resort, so we put it in as an attachment. You can see that in there. I don't think I have a slide of it. Number 10 is competencies. So any staff who is directly related to the operation of the system, their competencies are laid out within this section. The township maintains all of our training records for each certified operator to make sure that certification, advancement, and retention is completed. Number 11, personnel coverage. It's essentially the water operators that have been identified with competencies to be on the on-call rotation. So this is a 24/7 assurance that we have somebody to address anything. Number 12 is communication. For example, our QMS management review reports are delivered quarterly. Probably see them in about 2-3 weeks. Annual summary report is delivered annually. That will be next month. And the endorsement is following every election. Element 13, essential suppliers and service providers. This lays out anybody who provides goods and the people who could introduce risks to the quality and safety of our drinking water. So we have all sorts of information regarding them. They sign an acceptance that they are part of our QMS, and we check up on them annually. Element 14, infrastructure review. Again, this is done routinely. It's reviews the results of the previous year to determine if there's any introduced risk to the system and if there's any capital projects to mitigate those risks and move them into budget discussions. Element 15, infrastructure maintenance, rehab, and renewal. This is defines how programs must be documented, includes monitoring of the programs and an assessment of its effectiveness year after year. Element 16, sampling, testing, and monitoring. By sampling and testing water characteristics and monitoring the process parameters at various points within the system, potential problems are identified as early as possible. Element 17, calibration. The asset management program manages work orders that provides instruments, the frequency of calibration and maintenance. As well, water operators are verifying continually during their operational checks. Element 18 is emergency management. This element speaks to emergency management preparedness and describes a communication program that can exist in the event that there was an emergency related to drinking water. Element 19 is internal audits. Ours begins this week, as a matter of fact. We have an operator conducting ours this week. So it identifies any potential non-conformances and provides an opportunity for improvement or a corrective action to be created once a root cause analysis is completed. Element 20, management review. Management review meetings are held with the CAO, our council rep, and the managing director of infrastructure services, as well as QMS representatives, including Karen, both supervisors, and myself. Our wastewater supervisor also attends and provides an operational update to wastewater systems at that time. And, I missed one, sorry. And finally, last but not least, continual improvement. This is ultimately the goal of QMS, is continual improvement. This document is used to identify improvement, implement change, and track effectiveness. It's that plan, do cycle. So as you can see, the DWQMS is an integral part of the drinking water safety net. It was based off the recommendations from Justice O'Connor's report, and it provides for the framework of multi-barrier approach through the development of continuous improvement of process, procedure, water treatment, and quality assessment. And of course, the report is there for your consideration, and I'm happy to take any questions council may have.
Thank you, Dino. Thank you for that report. Comments, questions from council? Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I am reminded from our training that this is our obligation to help make sure we're kept abreast and aware of what's going on in the unlikely event of a problem or a challenge. At what point would we know? We agree with all of this, of course, but at what point would we know if there were a problem so that we could have some agency moving forward in that unlikely event?
That is defined in the QMS through our communications. Council, through, when we do get an adverse report through sampling, an email is sent to the CAO, the mayor, Colin, and the ORO, myself, Karen, who is our compliance coordinator. And if it escalates past that point, I would suspect that Dan and the mayor and Colin would brief you.
Any other comments or questions from council? Okay, thanks again, Dino.
Thank you.
We have a recommendation the Council of Township of Centre Wellington receives as information and overview of the drinking water quality management system, and that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington provide the endorsement of the quality management system operational plan. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Craddock, a seconder for that? Councillor Adams, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you. Our RP 0223 compensation market review, and I think Adam is going to speak to that.
Thank you, Mayor Waters, members of council. This report provides recommendations and seeks council approval for award of a request for proposal 02-23. That is regarding a compensation market review. Recommendations are that the council authorize the award for request for proposal 02-23 to Marianne Love Consulting at an upset limit of $41,550, including disbursements and excluding HST. And that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington further approve the provisional item related to council remuneration as part of staff compensation market review at an incremental cost of $4,800, excluding HST. The RFP was issued in accordance with the Township's purchasing and procurement bylaw. There were 6 plan takers and 4 responses received. The recommended proponent represents the highest scored by the selection committee, comprised of the Township CIO, Chief Human Resources Officer, and the Township's Human Resources and Payroll Coordinator. Award of this contract, inclusive of the provisional item, would fall within the allowable budget established for this initiative. And with your permission, I will turn it over to Rashid Hassan to provide context regarding project scope and answer any questions the council may have in relation to this award. Thank you.
Well, good evening. So I'll just provide the scope and a little bit details and some challenges why this compensation review is asked for. So let me just go into a summary of what this review would bring as a result. So the township's market competitiveness, that's what we're looking for. So we want to see how competitive we are with our competitors. This would help us to attract and the talent to the township. So our attraction of staff, this would actually help us do that. Ensure legislative compliance like pay equity legislation and other legislation, and how to best manage costs and provide an implementation plan for the recommendations of this work. So those are the summary objectives of this work. The scope would also go a little bit detailed into a market review for full-time, part-time, temporary job evaluation plans and processes, as well as the pay structures to identify any issues, concerns, compression issues, or pay equity gaps. So this is all within the scope of this work. The proponent will review focused job descriptions, provide an implementation plan of a new job evaluation system, which will include evaluating approximately 120 positions throughout the corporation, the placement into a grid system, and also the bands in the ranking for ranking purposes. The review of current titling conventions, which is the titles of the jobs, that's also part of this scope of this work, and pay equity compliance and market positioning, everything parts is within the scope of this project. So those are just the scope of this project. There are some challenges many municipalities are facing right now, and I'll just go through some of those. So there are certain hard to recruit positions, so which every municipality is looking for similar kind of candidates, and we are all trying to be better than the other municipality and the neighboring, and there's a talent war going on currently. So what that means is the candidates for those hard to recruit positions, they are very high in demand, and everyone is trying to better themselves in comparison to our competition. So there's a scarce pool of available candidates right now, and the areas where we struggle the most are building services, planning environment, water, wastewater, engineering positions, and certain management positions. So these are all the struggle areas where you cannot find talent. It's a very competitive market out there. So if you look at municipal world or MIN and other places where municipalities are advertising their positions, there's many and many going for months and months and not filled appropriately. The other issue with our, let's talk about job market and the township's little bit experience. So we have some success in easy to recruit positions. We are able to attract good candidates and able to retain them. So that's a good news. There are a lot of positives about working with Central Wellington, but the hard to recruit positions we've been really struggling with. So I'll go through one example. For example, in a recent management position, it took us about 12 to 14 months to recruit a position. After 2-3 attempts internally, we went to a search firm to hire this position. And in that competition, 3 candidates refused their candidacy after first interviews, that they don't want to continue because of salary competitiveness. So we are not competitive enough for that position with the market. So we hired the search firm, and we were very successful recruiting that colleague. I'm not going to name who that is. The recruitment files, other things, what we've seen is that a lot of candidates negotiating. So normally when we recruit, we offer the step 1 of the position, whatever the grade range is. And most of the positions recently recruited are asking for more than that step 1. So step 1 does not satisfy the market out there to be recruited here. The other challenge is, I know this has been mentioned in council chambers before about flexible workplace. So let me just touch on that a little bit. So post-pandemic, there's been a lot of challenges in recruitment because there's a high demand of, flexible workplace, and staff are, possible staff, when we try to recruit them, they want a less commute. So commuting is an issue. They would like to see those hybrid models of work. They would also love to see other bells and whistles attached to compensation package to basically the employees are recruiting the employer as well. So it's a two-way street. It's no longer that you go and throw the best money and get the candidate. They won't work for you if they don't believe in you, in your corporation, in total compensation philosophy, what you have. So we have been definitely looking at that. So struggles, not the right word, but we are aware of that. So in everything what we do, we are aspiring to become that employer of choice, and we are trying to bring policies, procedures through our programs that will be able to attract people. So for example, knowing all these issues, we started started challenging ourselves, saying, okay, what makes an employer of choice? So where employees can be satisfied, where they have opportunities to grow, they have future needs addressed if they want to see succession kind of counseling and career planning, what kind of internal learning and development program and options we can offer. So I'm happy to report that here we started that work a year ago, and now we have our leadership development program offered through Mohawk College Enterprise. I think that's been mentioned in this chamber. We have 15 participants from our corporation, so all managers and some managing directors are taking that leadership development course. And also county has also contributed by sending 5 of their employees to attend. With that, we are bringing a new learning and development training calendar that's coming out. That's an internal effort. We've been discussing that. and it would have more opportunities for staff to become first-time supervisors. A lot of training would occur within, so we are doing a trainer session. So we'll be training our own colleagues to become trainers, so it's very cost effective. So that session is, I think, coming on April 12th, Dan, if I'm correct, okay. So those are the kind of things where we are looking at workforce planning. We are looking at HR strategy of this corporation. We are also creating new programs and processes in each division and department to make sure that it's a good learning organization where we treat our people right with the right compensation model and with all this opportunity to grow within ourselves so we don't lose staff because it's already hard to recruit. So we are making sure that we are working on that. So all this work would take some time, 1 or 2 years to achieve. In the meantime, to overcome our challenges for recruitment and retention, we are asking that council looks at this kind of program of compensation very carefully and to make us market relevant, to make sure that we do not lose to our competition and not able to attract the right kind of people. So we are requesting to become an employer of choice. We start this work as soon as we can. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Rashid. Comments, questions? Ms. Adams.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you for that. And yeah, I kind of appreciate how you introduced it not just as a recruitment tool, but it's also retainment as well, and the importance of retaining the good people you have. And offering them, you know, the opportunities for advancement and everything like that. So it was nice to hear those things. So just a question, this topic has been bounced around a couple times now, but when you spoke about the alternative workplace, is that something that there's a reevaluation going on? Am I correct to understand that?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. So, yes, absolutely. So March is the month we introduced it a year ago. So we were supposed to just do a review. I can very quickly verbalize that our uptake was pretty low. So we opened the application process. We discussed that in the last meeting. The people who took this on, out of those, say 40% are back to physical attendance in the workplace. It worked for some, it didn't work for some. So we definitely offer that, and we have other flexible arrangements within the teams as well. So we have no issues in being flexible and even more flexible. But this review would come very quickly where we want to figure out, and as a senior management team, we'll look into that, okay, what are the areas, what are the lessons learned? Maybe do a survey of the staff, what people are saying about it. Maybe a year is a good enough check point, eh? Yeah.
Councillor Evoy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And thank you, Rashid. We've talked about this many times, and so I'm going to repeat myself respectfully and say the numbers are the numbers, but we didn't offer it to our management team, and I take issue with that. If we're trying to hire the best quality managers, what do we know about the next generation of employees? They take work-life balance a lot more seriously than any of us did, and we need to embrace that and figure out, yes, it's great to ask for more money. This council voted wholeheartedly for more staff because we recognize the growth of this community. And in so saying, I personally can speak for myself. Of course, I'm going to vote to allow us to offer more. But in that, offering more money alone won't be enough. And I really, really hope that we, in those future discussions, consider the hybrid option or the whatever we're calling it, I apologize, that it should go to our management as well. That's who you said we were struggling to recruit, so I think it's time we reevaluated that for everybody. Respectfully, thank you.
Okay. Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. I'm very pleased with the successful candidate for the RFP. I'm very aware of Marianne Love and her experience with Almers and some other things that would be in consideration of looking at these positions. So I'm very pleased with the outcome for this. I I do also see, just from this past budget, we need a bit of an HR overhaul, and we're growing, and we look at all the work coming down, and yeah, so I'm definitely on board. Thank you for bringing this forward. I guess my question, if I have one, is where did Marianne come in with, if you could say, on the amount compared to the other offerings? Are you allowed to say or no?
I'm not, so I'm looking around, so.
No, typically through the RFP process, we
Right.
only publicize the selected proponent from a dollars and cents perspective.
Okay. And you did interview her,
Yes,
the consultant?
the consultants were interviewed, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, Councillor Adams.
Sorry, just one more question. Looking at the recommendation before us, it's quite clear that they've separated out the review of the council compensation, which makes for a good like headline and stuff. But I'm just kind of curious, because to me that's like one job description versus how many, like, curious about how many staff. Can you just remind me again about how many staff we have here at the township and approximately how many job descriptions that might be? Yeah.
Absolutely. So the scope of this RFP is about 120 positions. So we call them focused positions. So we may not have the consultant do all of those. We may assist as an HR department. So it's a lot of work to do 120 of the jobs to be reviewed. We have at a time in summer, we have 250 plus employees. So if you look at the job families, you look at the job table and the job grade we have. So 120 out of those is a very big, large enough sample to give us good idea about the market. Okay.
Yes, Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Rashid. I was just curious about the additional piece, the incremental one for the review of the council remuneration. I think if I read correctly in the bylaw, it said that was passed in 2018. I think it said it needed to happen at least before 8 months before the end of the term. Yes. So I'm just curious, we're only like 6 months into the term. So I'm curious why we're doing it now. Is it just because we have this opportunity, or is it something that could be wait until like 3 years from now?
Absolutely. I can start and Dan can help too. So we did take a report to previous council, and they deferred that. They didn't want to do a market review at that stage before elections. So we were within time when we presented to them. So now it's very opportune because we are going for a market review for staff. So this could be done very cost-effective way if council would like to do that too.
Thank you, Rashid, and through Mayor Waters. Because the previous council did not want to look at the remuneration of council, what staff are proposing is that we combine the council review with staff review, and look at doing that every 4 years in line with the first term of council. And it seems to be an efficient and a comprehensive way of looking at total compensation and remuneration.
Any other comments or questions from council? Okay. So we have a thank you, Rashid. We have a recommendation that council, the Township of Centre Wellington, award a request for proposal 2-23 regarding the compensation market review to Marianne Love Consulting at the upset limit of $41,550, including disbursements excluding HST, and that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington approve the provisional item related to council remuneration review as part of the staff compensation market review at an incremental cost of $4,800 excluding HST. Do you have a mover for that? Councillor Evoy, Secretary, Councillor McDonald, all those in favor? So moved. Okay. Item 9.5, Advisory Committee Selection Team. Ms. O'Kane.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Waters, once council approves the terms of reference and directs staff to commence recruitment for advisory committees, vacancies are typically posted on the township's website, local newspapers, social media, radio, digital signs, and other corporate media channels. Candidates are asked to outline their qualifications, specific skills and interests, and background relevant to the committee. In the past, Legislative Services has prepared a list of applicants, and applications are forwarded to the appropriate department for your review, and a report is prepared for council and recommendations put forward for appointments. Staff is proposing a new process for this term of council, which would include the establishment of an advisory committee selection team that would review the self-nomination forms, conduct interviews if necessary, and put forward the recommended appointments. The selection team is proposed to be comprised of the following: a representative from Legislative Services, committee staff liaison and/or the managing director, a representative from Human Resources, 2 members of council, and a staff member volunteer. We anticipate only requiring 4 to 5 meetings, combining several together if possible, and the meetings could be held in person or virtually. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council?
This isn't, well, I have one question, but I think this is great. I think it's a really good improvement over the previous process, so thank you for doing that and bringing this forward. I am curious if we might have, could cut back on the number of staff. Like, do you need just, are the numbers beside the bullet points and brackets how many people? So maybe only 1 staff person from HR, for example, or is that meant to be 2?
Oh, that might be my bad, because I
Okay.
think it's 1 from Human Resources. The only 2 would be if the committee staff liaison and/or managing director, and that would be up to them.
Perfect, thank you.
That's why I don't do math.
That's okay, as discussed.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, sir. I have a question around, this is of interest to a lot of people. How do we go about, how is the process going to be done on, say, 4 council people want to sit on 2 positions? What is the process for that, please?
Very good question. I think if we have more than 2 members of council interested in this process, what we will do is we have everyone's name, and we will pull 2 names out of a lottery.
Any other comments, questions from council? Okay, I guess we'll ask if who's interested.
Sure.
Who would be interested? Okay, so we have 4 right now. So Councillor Evoy, Councillor McDonald, Councillor Jefferson, and Councillor Wilton. So we will do this manual kind of thing here. Yes.
Just a question while Carrie's getting the names there, through you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify, this is to a committee to select the citizen appointees, not the council representative that will sit on the committee.
That's correct.
Okay,
The council representative will be appointed later.
Later time,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry, I have Evoy, Jefferson, McDonald, and who was the other one?
Jefferson and Wilton. Yep.
Now, somebody would maybe help me fold these.
Oh, I can help you fold these. Yeah.
Oh, what a cute little Easter bowl.
We do it right here at Center Wellington.
There are still things that
Okay.
I love.
I would go one more.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like that. And maybe should we have?
Who would you like to? Pat, draw the names?
Yep. Yep.
If you want to just announce the names.
Yes, I have in front of me Councillor Jefferson, congratulations, and Councillor Evoy, congratulations. Okay, so I will read the recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington approve the advisory committee selection team structure as set out in the report Cord 2023-30 from the manager of legislation services and municipal clerk, and further that Councillor Jefferson and Councillor Evoy be appointed to the advisory committee selection team. So do I have a mover for that? Mover, Councillor Wilton. Seconder, Councillor Craddock. All those in favor? I guess you can vote for yourself. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Sorry, that was carried?
Yes, it was
Okay.
carried. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are at item 9.6, Human Resources Service Agreement, Township of Pushlinch, and we're going to welcome back Rashid.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to say this one, I'm very excited, so it may show in a minute. So, so this affects my own team. So we had agreement with Township of Pushlinch to provide, share human resources position. So that was 50-50 funded by us at Township here at Centre Wellington and Township of Pushlinch. That worked well for a year. But both parties' needs have, increased. So we need somebody full-time. So by approving the budget and the staffing strategy, the council have approved another 0.5 FT. So we would like to bring that incumbent to us. So that's a shared person we currently share with Pushlinch. So that leaves Pushlinch without any HR service. So we have this agreement in place, which have some termination clauses and all that. The Township of Pushlinch CAO approached myself and our CAO, and we discussed a service model with them. They would like to give us a fee for service to provide them a whole suite of HR services. So that includes HR services in recruitment and training, and health and safety, and few other things. They cannot afford multiple positions, so for them, just a one-stop shop for HR service from our Human Resources Department for a fee-for-service model. So this agreement is to cancel that shared position with them and also allow us to have a fee which is in the schedule included. We'll provide them these services through one or multiple HR professionals. We may increase one person position funded by the fee we collect. And that person who serves Pushlinch would also have all this team backup from Township of Centre Wellington. So health and safety expertise, HR expertise, so they will not be on their own island. So that way we share our resources with Pushlinch. Also, this was part of a study of KPMG report about the service delivery for municipalities in the county, and this was one of the areas which was highlighted, that human resources and other services be shared, which is better for all the member municipalities. So we have the similar model of other sharing of service with Mapleton and other places in Minto for IT. So we have multiple contracts like that. So this is just an additional contract we'll manage, and this will be managed by myself and my team, and we will support neighboring municipality who cannot afford multiple HR positions.
Thank you, Rashid. Comments, questions from council? Thank you for that report. I think this is a very good thing for us, for our staff, and we're definitely open to sharing our resources with other neighboring municipalities. It just demonstrates the quality of staff that we have here as well. So. Okay, we have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington authorize the Mayor and Clerk to sign an agreement for human resources services between the Township of Centre Wellington and the Township of Pushlinch as presented in report HR 2023-02. Do you have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton. Seconder, Councillor McDonald. All those in favor? So moved. Item 9.7, Trade Tracks Facility Rental Exemption, and we have Pat Newsom here.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Waters. Last meeting, there was a representative from Trade Tracks that came to ask for council to waive or reduce the fees. So this report is in response as requested by council. Council does have the authority to make any decision based on this request. You can waive the fees, you can take council's, the staff's recommendation, or you can not provide any compensation. I just want to remind you, it's really up to council how they want to handle this. We're making a recommendation just for your consideration as an option. As you'll see under the consultation, a number of staff were involved in back checking and to see what has been done with past requests. The precedent has been set by previous councils that fees are not waived. It could open the doors to numerous requests, and the budgets are based on collecting these fees to offset the costs to operate these venues. So the cost of an event would include everything from food and tents and entertainment and all sorts of things when someone runs an event, including the cost of renting the venue. And so when fees are not collected, then that creates a deficit that has to be made up somewhere else. There is a 15% discount to large events, and that's the township's contribution to those events, and that has been applied in this circumstance. So with that in mind and looking at the permit, staff recommend the option to remove the cost of the space rented that is actually not going to be utilized by this event. It was booked so that they would have a vacant area to act as a buffer for this event, and given the majority of attendants are students, this was a good idea, but really until they hold the event, we won't know if that's a necessity in future years. So this is an option for the inaugural event where you can offer a one-time opportunity to waive the fee just for that buffer zone, ask township staff not to rent it, so they have that, and then we can watch and observe and see if it's something they should rent in future events. Next year, they would have an opportunity to apply for one of the community impact grants for their event, and I think that the rest of the report is self-explanatory, and if there are any questions, I'm here to answer them, and I return it back to you, Mayor Waters.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. So I'm looking at this information and I see, so we've done 15% before. So I think going forward, considering this is the inaugural event, it's new, they're trying to get established. I really appreciate the proposal that you gave, where we're not doing the whole thing, we're just doing part. So I would be okay with doing that. But after this, I guess I'll put that to you, being a one-time thing, and then in future, then they can apply for grants. Yes, you mentioned that. And they could ask for the 15% as well, or just the grant next year.
The 15% is in the rates and fees established by council for major events and is automatically applied by staff when an event qualifies for that. So that will always be part of their rental. If they would like further support, then they could apply in future for the community impact grants, and those funds would then be looked at along with all of the other requests, and council would award whatever funds they felt through that grant program.
Thank you.
Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. My question is not about this particular event, but I do have looking for clarity around what does a large event mean, insofar as that group gets the 15%, when I think I would like to see the smaller struggling groups get given the break. So can you, and is there room for council to revisit this? So what constitutes a large event that gets 15% off?
I think I'm going to have to go off the top of my head, so I apologize. I believe it's when you rent both indoor and outdoor space or more than one venue for an event. And I believe it's outlined more clearly in the rates and fees, which I don't have here in front of me, but I see my friend Adam is looking them up.
Is there, through you, Mr. Mayor, is there any appetite to revisit that as we go forward with this new council? I mean, again, one of the things that I would like to see is knowing that those who are doing something for the first time, or, we're trying to engage our community, and I personally know how expensive it is to rent our space. Is there an appetite to revisit that for other groups instead of just large groups? I just think it's a discussion I'd like to see down the road.
I'll just comment that every year this council sets rates and fees, and it's part of that bylaw and policy. So we take your direction on that, And there also would be an earlier setting of the community impact grants. So those are opportunities for new inaugural events to apply for additional funding from council.
Councillor Walton.
Just a comment that not all large events necessarily are wealthy events. So a good example would be the Fergus Agricultural Society that has the Fergus Fall Fair. I expect is considered a large event, and they are not wealthy or yeah. So.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, we have a recommendation that the Council of Township of, sorry? Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to respond to your comment about the Fall Fair. There are some other events that have historically received different compensation, additional breaks and fees, and those are set out in like 5-year agreements with the township. They come for council's authority to make sure that those programs that council wants to support receives that support. That's just the other avenue which a group can go through.
Sorry about that, Pat. Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, I have a recommendation here. Recommendation that the Council Township of Centre Wellington direct staff to remove the trade tracks rental permit, the charge for the ball diamond and soccer field for a savings of $896.07, and that these spaces be blocked off by the township and not booked during the event. Do I have a mover for that? Mover for that? Yes, Councillor Craddock. Seconder? Councillor Jefferson? Yeah. Or Adams? Sorry. Adams. Guys are throwing me off here. Okay. What?
We're trying to share the love.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. We have a mover and a seconder? Yes. Okay. All those in favor? So moved. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pat. Item 9.8.
Yes.
Yes. Just keeping you on your toes there. Item.
I was waiting for, I was looking at it.
Yes. Welcome, Tom.
Apparently Carrie's quite happy.
Thanks very much. And through you, Mayor Waters, I'd first of all like to apologize for the late submission of this report. We were surprised to get it. I'm surprised I'm standing here at the meeting. So I'd also like to thank staff that helped to get this report in such a timely manner. We really appreciate your help today. It is an important item for us to get looked after. So the recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington authorizes the Fire Chief to execute a user agreement with the Grand River Conservation Authority for a temporary non-exclusive license to access the Elora Gorge and the Elora Quarry conservation areas to hold general rescue training. Centre Wellington Fire Rescue conducts training operations throughout the year on Grand River Conservation Authority lands that include the Gorge Park and the Elora Quarry. Training evolutions include swiftwater, ice water rescue, and rope rescue operations. Centre Wellington Fire Rescue attends emergency calls within the GRSA properties, and on an annual basis, on ongoing training is necessary to successfully complete these emergency rescues. Report the access agreement between the Township of Centre Wellington and Grand River Conservation Authority will allow Centre Wellington Fire Rescue to access lands owned by GRCA within the Township of Centre Wellington at no cost to the Township of Centre Wellington for general training purposes. The GRCA lands include the Elora Gorge Park and the Elora Quarry. This signed access agreement and a certificate of liability insurance from the Township issuer has been requested by Ben Roseborough, the Superintendent of the Elora Gorge. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, you said ice water, and that's not in this.
It isn't in here.
Did you want it in there? Is that supposed to be in here?
We could add it, if we could amend it, then ice water should be in there, but that's what we use the quarry for.
Okay, just to make sure that gets added then. Thank you so much.
We need to have that in the recommendation. Okay. Yes, any other comments, questions from staff? Or staff, yeah, you're like staff. But council? Okay, I have a recommendation, thank you, Tom, that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington authorize the Fire Chief to execute a user agreement with the Grand River Conservation Authority for temporary non-exclusive license to access the Elora Gorge and Elora Quarry conservation areas to hold general rescue training. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jefferson. All those in favor? So moved. Thank you. Just, what, we, okay. Information items, treasurer's statement, 2022, council and committee remuneration and expenses, and we have a report from Adam.
Thank you, Mayor Waters, and through you, really just a housekeeping item. Informational report as pertains to the 2022 council remuneration. We're obligated to report on this annually by March 31st of each year, and this is just the culmination of those efforts for council's consideration.
Receive that for information. Item 11, bylaws. Are you ready? Okay. Bylaws. 2023-22, a bylaw to amend the Township of Centre Wellington Zone Bylaw 2009-045 as amended to remove the holding zone symbol from certain land, Walser Building. Next one, 2023-23, a bylaw to restrict weight of vehicles passing over certain bridges in the Township of Centre Wellington and repeal bylaw 2022-06. Next one. 2023-24, a bylaw to amend the Township of Centre Wellington zoning bylaw 2009-045 as amended to change the zoning of subject lands from C2 to C275 to 950, 960 St. David Street North. 2023-25, a bylaw to exempt certain lots within Plan 61M-245 Township of Centre Wellington from part lot control provisions of the Planning Act. 2023-26, a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a human resources services agreement between the Corporation of Township of Centre Wellington and the Corporation of Township of Pushlich. 2023-27, a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a temporary access agreement between the Corporation Township of Centre Wellington and the Grand River Conservation Authority. I have a recommendation that bylaws 2023-22 through 2023-27 be read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed by the mayor and clerk and the corporate seal affixed. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Adams, seconder, Councillor Wilton. All those in favor? So moved. Thank you. Notice of motions. Nothing? Motions where notices have been given. Nothing. Confirmation bylaw. 14.1, bylaw to confirm the actions of council. Recommendation that the bylaw 2023-28 to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held March 27, 2023 be introduced a first, second, and third time and pass an open council. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor McDonald. Seconder, Councillor Jefferson. All those in favor? So move. And we need a recommendation to join again? Okay. It's funny, weird, because everyone has, it's different everywhere else. Anyways, do we have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Wilton, seconder, Councillor Adams. All those in favor? Thank you for your time and have a lovely evening.